Hi, I'm Grace. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to show you in this video my process of character design. This is Enid, Eager Enid, and this is the finished picture here, and I'm going to show you the sketching process. So I use Procreate on the iPad Pro, and I'm going to show you the beginnings of my development process. So Eager Enid was born from Tom Bancroft's Mermaid 2021 prompt, Eager. And I thought I want to do a mermaid and I want to do a bit of a story to it as well. So I thought, okay, Eager. Let's make it a bit interesting. Maybe she could be like really excited and be squeezing something. So I thought it'd be quite cute if she was like hugging an octopus or another sea creature. I settled on octopus in the end. So I had a little look at some references on Pinterest of little girls, because I thought she could be a little girl mermaid, squeezing kittens, animals, puppies, things like that. Very much inspired by my 2-year-old, who is braver than anybody I know, really, and she just goes straight in and ask questions later. She's one of those. So that's kind of the basis of Eager Enid. She just doesn't really think things through, and I thought there's a good little story there afterwards. It could work her up into all sorts of situations where her eagerness would get her into trouble. So there'd be cautionary tales and teaching children patience and how to read signals and big pictures. So that's kind of where we're starting off. So when I start sketching, I just really roughly, I use a sketchy pencil or just a basic pencil brush on Procreate, and I just start sketching some rough gesture lines just to get an idea of where I want things in the image, what sort of thing they're doing, whether it's an action pose or a static pose. And like I said earlier, I wanted her sort of doing something or in the middle of something, or you could tell what she was doing. She wasn't just standing there looking. The sketching stage is good for trying to get a bit of personality in, that you can't just save it all for the rendering. At the end, you have to know what your character's thinking, what sort of personality they are. So I've drawn Enid as quite a young mermaid. So when you draw young characters, they've generally got bigger heads in proportion to their bodies. Their limbs are a little bit shorter, a bit chunkier, big eyes, and just a general cuteness that you're trying to capture. So when I'm sketching her out, I'm bearing all that in mind when I'm laying down my lines. I do sketch quite messily, not particularly neat when I'm laying down my initial lines, but that's kind of why I use a new layer underneath. Like you can see here, I've blocked in just some tones, just grey tones, to help define shape, which also helps you visualise proportions a little bit as well. It gives a bit more flesh to the character. So once I'm happy with that, I'll have a look at what else I can add to give it a bit more personality. So you can see I've got a reference picture on here as well. There's a real cuteness about that little girl. She looks extra excited to be hugging that cat, and that's kind of what I wanted to capture. So you've got the big chubby cheeks, and you can't see the eyes because they're screwed up tight, little button nose. So yeah, keeping all of that in proportion to try and show not only age but character as well, and the excitement. I'm also trying to be mindful of the overall composition, so I thought I'd add some extra bits and bobs, some extra characters for a bit of interest and to set the scene a little bit as well. So I've blocked in a fish. It's all very much open to interpretation at this point. I might change it a bit later on, but it kind of helps add extra personality to the character, I think, when you've got some props or supporting characters or a little bit of an environment as well. You can visualise like the end result a little bit better, I find anyway. So that's what I've started doing here, playing around with her tail positioning as well, because she hasn't got any legs. It would obviously denote a lot of her her feelings and her character in her stance. So trying to work out, all right, if you haven't got legs, how do you show like a kind of jumping up and down, excited, when you can't show legs or feet. So I'm playing around with her tail until I get the right length and shape and position, and then work on the characters a little bit more surrounding her. By this point, I'm starting to get a bit more of an idea of what a story might be for her, a bit of a narrative, a bit of an idea of how I want the overall finished picture to look as well. I've got a kind of Disney cute going on, trying not to add too much detail to the supporting characters and the props, and just focusing mainly on Enid, on the main character. Once I'm happy with how I think the overall composition is, I like this one. You've got the focal point is drawn into the action going on in the middle of the scene where Enid is cuddling the octopus, and it looks a little bit confused. This point I was still a little bit lost on the octopus, whether I want it to be part of the focal point as well as Enid, or whether I just want Enid to be the focal point. But as far as composition goes and Enid as a character, I'm pretty happy with where I am with this sketch. So that's the point where I'll add a new layer over the top, lower the opacity of the layers underneath, and I'll get, here I've used a blue, I quite like sketching in blue, just to pick the final outline, or it's still a sketch, it's still rough, but just simplify my loose sketches underneath. So I go over in a blue pencil just to define the shape and any little tweaks of sizing that isn't quite right. And then once I'm happy with that, I get ready for the colouring process. So I'm going to do that one in a separate video, just in case anyone's not interested in seeing it all in one go. So yeah, stay tuned for the next vid. I hope you find this helpful, and remember, how I do things isn't necessarily the way other people do things. You might find you work more comfortably doing things slightly differently, but the main thing to remember is the sketching process is quite an important one. You want to get your composition right, you want to get your scaling, because once you go in and you decide to change things, if you've started colouring or, final rendering, just finishing details, it's going to be a lot harder, especially if you've started to add texture and things like that and lighting. So it's important to have a play around and be as loose as you want during the sketching stage, because that's how you find your favourite composition. So another thing that you can do is thumbnailing. So that would be, this would be a thumbnail. I actually draw it quite big, but the idea of a thumbnail, you draw it small, so in comparison it would be the size that the reference picture is up in the corner, and just using a thick pen or a pencil or something, just really roughly block out the composition, so you know where your character is going to be, you know where the scene is going to be, and that helps kind of drive a bit of a narrative into your picture. This started off just as a character, really, a character development, character design, and as I got more into it, I decided to make it a little bit more of a narrative scene. But it's important remembering, whenever you're creating characters, what you're going to do with it. You don't just want to show off your skills and abilities. I mean, you can, but why not make it work for you as well? And is it something that could be made into prints, or a character that could be licensed by a games company, or, do you want to write a book about this character, or, there's all sorts of options. So that's kind of where my thought process is going when I'm sketching here. I'm thinking, she's a bit lonely just in the middle by herself. So some supporting characters can add to a bit of excitement and energy in the picture, but also make it a bit more appealing if you wanted to make it into some sort of merchandise at the end, be it a print, like I said, or even a fabric print. That's crossed my mind as well. She'd make quite a cute fabric print with her little friends, her little jellyfish and crab friends as well. So it's always a good idea to have the big picture in mind when you're doing your sketching. So congratulations if you've made it this far. It's the end of the episode. This is the first part of the character design process that I'm showing you, and that was sketching Enid. So the next video is going to be a little bit more about colouring and talking about why I've picked the colours, and yeah, that's it really. So thanks very much for watching. If you like what I do and you want to learn a little bit more about me, you can go to my Patreon. I'm Grace Wright. Yeah, see you there hopefully. Thanks.